The silver ship moved slowly through the darkness of space near Jupiter. Inside the research vessel Nexus Prime, Zethkar stared at his computer screen with growing alarm. His purple skin had turned a pale shade of blue, which meant he was deeply worried. As the lead scientist for the vegan collective, he had seen many strange planets in his long career. But nothing had prepared him for this report. The planet was called Sol 3 by the locals who lived there. The Federation computers had given it a much scarier name, Class X Deathworld. This was the worst rating any planet could get. Most Class X worlds were empty rocks covered in poison gas or burning lava. But this planet was different. This planet was full of life. That was what made it so terrifying. Zethkar read the report again, hoping he had made a mistake. The planet had massive storms that could destroy entire cities. The ground shook regularly, splitting open and swallowing buildings. Huge waves of water crashed against the shores with enough force to flatten mountains. The air itself could become poisonous during certain weather events. And yet, somehow, intelligent life had evolved there and was thriving. A soft chime told him that Ambassador Velinary wanted to speak with him. She appeared on his screen, her green tentacles moving in patterns that showed she was nervous. Like all members of her species, she had evolved on a peaceful water world where the biggest danger was a mild current in the ocean. Zethkar, please tell me this report is wrong, she said. The Federation Council is in emergency session. They want to know if we should quarantine this entire star system. Before Zethkar could answer, another chime sounded. This time it was the ship's captain. Ambassador, we have a situation. There's an unknown vessel approaching our position. It's coming from the direction of the Deathworld. On the main viewing screen, a sleek metal ship appeared. It was smaller than the Nexus Prime, but looked much more solid. The design was strange, with sharp angles and thick armor plating. To the aliens aboard the Federation vessel, it looked like a ship built for war. Commander Jake Morrison sat in the captain's chair of the Terra Nova, watching the alien ship on his own screen. He was a tall man with short brown hair and calm brown eyes. Like most humans who worked in space, he had spent years training for this moment. First contact with an alien species was something humans had dreamed about for centuries. Open a communication channel, Jake ordered. His voice was steady and confident. Let's see if we can talk to them. The alien ship responded quickly. Soon, Jake found himself looking at the strangest creature he had ever seen. Ambassador Velinary appeared to be some kind of sea creature with green skin and tentacles instead of arms. Her large black eyes studied him with obvious fear. Greetings, Jake said with a friendly smile. I am Commander Jake Morrison of the human exploration ship Terra Nova. We come in peace. Velinary's tentacles writhed with anxiety. You are from the Deathworld, she said. It was not a question. How are you still alive? Jake looked confused. Deathworld? Oh, you mean Earth. Yes, that's our home planet. Why do you call it a Deathworld? The question seemed to make Velinary even more nervous. Our scans show that your planet should be completely uninhabitable. The radiation levels, the seismic activity, the atmospheric storms, nothing should be able to survive there. Well, we seem to manage just fine, Jake said with a laugh. Earth can be a bit rough sometimes, but it's home. Would you like to meet our science team? They can tell you more about our planet. Within an hour, both ships had docked together. Jake led a small team of humans aboard the alien vessel. Dr. Lisa Carter walked beside him, carrying a datapad full of information about Earth. She was a woman in her 40s with red hair and green eyes. As the Terra Nova's chief biologist, she was excited to share what she knew about Earth's ecosystem. The inside of the alien ship was very different from human vessels. Everything was soft and rounded, with no sharp edges anywhere. The lighting was dim and blue, and the air smelled like ocean water. The aliens who greeted them moved slowly and carefully, as if they were afraid of breaking something. Ambassador Velinary led them to a large meeting room where several other aliens waited. Zethkar was there, along with other scientists and officials from different species. They all stared at the humans with a mixture of curiosity and terror. Please sit down, Velinari said, gesturing to chairs that had been quickly adjusted for human size. We have many questions about your world. Dr. Carter activated her datapad and smiled. I'd be happy to tell you about Earth. It's really quite beautiful. We have 7 continents and 5 oceans. The biodiversity is amazing. We share our planet with millions of other species. What kind of species? Asked Zethkar, his voice shaking slightly. Oh, all kinds, Lisa said cheerfully. Large mammals like elephants and whales, big cats like lions and tigers, reptiles like crocodiles and snakes. In the oceans we have sharks, jellyfish, and octopi. The variety is incredible. Several aliens made choking sounds. One of them, a small creature that looked like a walking flower, actually fainted and had to be helped from the room. You live with predators? Velinari asked in horror. Large predators? Well, we don't exactly live with them, Jake explained. But yes, they share our planet. Humans learned to coexist with dangerous animals a long time ago. We've developed ways to protect ourselves and avoid conflicts. But how do you survive? Asked another alien scientist. Our homeworlds have no large predators. The most dangerous creature on my planet is a small insect that gives you a minor rash. Lisa pulled up images on her datapad. Humans are pretty adaptable. We learn to use tools and build shelters. We can live in almost any environment on Earth, from the frozen Arctic to hot deserts, from high mountains to deep valleys. We've built cities everywhere. The aliens studied the images with growing disbelief. They saw pictures of human cities, built next to active volcanoes, coastal towns that regularly faced massive storms, and mountain settlements where the air was thin and cold. This is impossible, whispered Zethkar. These environments would kill any of our species within minutes. Really? Lisa seemed genuinely surprised. I guess we're just used to it. Earth has always been a challenging place to live. Our ancestors had to be tough to survive. They dealt with ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and all sorts of natural disasters. Ice ages? Velinari's tentacles had gone completely still, which meant she was in shock. Your planet freezes over regularly? Oh, not regularly, Jake said. The last ice age ended about 12,000 years ago. But yes, Earth goes through climate changes. Humans have adapted to survive them all. Dr. Carter showed more pictures. Humans swimming in the ocean, hiking up mountains, exploring caves, and working in environments that look deadly to the alien observers. In one image, a human was standing next to a waterfall that dropped hundreds of feet into a rocky canyon. You voluntarily go to these dangerous places? Asked an alien that looked like a giant butterfly. Sure, Lisa said. Many humans enjoy outdoor activities. Rock climbing, deep sea diving, skydiving, mountain hiking, it's fun and exciting. The word fun seemed to break something in the aliens' minds. Several of them began talking rapidly in their own languages. Others sat in stunned silence, staring at the humans as if they were looking at creatures from a nightmare. Ambassador Velinari raised one tentacle for quiet. Commander Morrison, Dr. Carter, I think we need to discuss this situation with our superiors. Your species and your world are unique in our experience. Jake nodded. Of course. We're happy to share any information you need. Humans have always hoped to meet other intelligent species and learn from each other. As the meeting ended and the humans returned to their ship, the aliens remained in the conference room. They sat in silence for a long time, trying to process what they had learned. Finally, Zethkar spoke. We need to contact the Federation Council immediately, he said. They need to know what we're dealing with. These humans didn't evolve on a death world. They evolved to be the perfect survivors of the galaxy's most dangerous planet. Velinaria's tentacles moved in slow, worried patterns. The question is, what do we do with this information? Are they a threat to galactic peace, or are they something else entirely? Neither of them had an answer, but both knew that the galaxy would never be the same after this day. 3 days after the first meeting, the Federation research ship buzzed with activity. Scientists from 12 different worlds had arrived to study the humans and their impossible planet. Chief Researcher Thelmos, a tall blue creature with 4 arms and silver eyes, had taken charge of the investigation. His species came from a world where the most dangerous thing was a flower that made you sneeze. Dr. Ben Rodriguez sat patiently in the medical bay as alien doctors scanned every part of his body. He was a stocky man with black hair and kind eyes, and he served as the Terra Nova's chief medical officer. The alien medical equipment hummed and beeped around him, recording data that made the alien doctors gasp in shock. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Hexali, a small creature that looked like a walking mushroom. "His bone density is 3 times what it should be. How does he even move?" "Actually, I feel pretty normal," Ben said with a smile. "Human bones need to be strong. We fall down a lot when we're kids, and we do activities that put stress on our skeleton. Sports, running, jumping. Our bones adapted to handle the pressure." Thelmos studied the bone scans with all 4 of his eyes. "On my world, a fall from even a small height would shatter our bones completely. How do human children survive to adulthood?" "Well, kids are pretty bouncy," Ben explained. "They heal fast too. Broken bones, cuts, bruises, children recover from. Injuries that would be serious problems for adults. It's just part of growing up on Earth." The alien doctors exchanged worried looks. They had never heard of a species where children regularly suffered injuries that would hospitalize an adult of their own kind. Dr. Yxandra, who resembled a large jellyfish floating in a tank of water, activated another scanner. "Your muscle fibers are incredibly dense, and your cardiovascular system. It's like your body is designed for constant combat." "Not combat exactly," Ben corrected, "but humans have always been active. We're persistence hunters originally. Our ancestors would chase animals for miles until they collapsed from exhaustion. We evolved to keep going when other species would give up." "Persistence hunting?" Thelmos looked confused. "You mean you would follow prey until it died of fatigue?" "Pretty much. Humans aren't the fastest or strongest animals on Earth, but we have incredible endurance. We can keep moving for hours or even days when we need to. Marathon runners can cover over 26 miles without stopping." Several alien doctors required medical attention after hearing this. The idea of running for hours was so foreign to them that their bodies went into shock. Meanwhile, in another part of the ship, Captain Amy Foster was showing Federation military officials some historical records from Earth. Amy was a woman in her 30s with short, blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. She had served in the human Space Force for 15 years and was used to dealing with difficult situations. General Crixenol, the Federation's top military advisor, studied the data with growing alarm. His species looked like large insects with shiny black shells, and they had evolved as peaceful farmers on a quiet agricultural world. "These records cannot be accurate," he said, his voice clicking with stress. "This document claims that humans fought a war that lasted 6 years and killed over 50 million people. That's World War II, Amy explained calmly. One of our bigger conflicts, but not the worst. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned a lot about strategy, tactics, and survival under pressure." "But why?" Crixenol asked. "Why would a species constantly fight itself?" Amy thought about this for a moment. "Competition for resources, mostly. Earth has limited space and materials, so human groups often came into conflict. But we also learned to work together during crises. The same war one mentioned ended when multiple human nations joined forces to defeat a common enemy." She pulled up more records. Images of human soldiers fighting in frozen mountains, burning deserts, and muddy swamps. Pictures of people continuing to fight despite injuries that would instantly kill most alien species. "This soldier lost his leg and kept fighting." Crixenol pointed at one image with a shaking claw. "Humans can function with serious injuries for short periods," Amy said. "Adrenaline helps us ignore pain and damage when we're in danger. It's a survival response that kept our ancestors alive when they were attacked by predators." "Your species evolved to ignore mortal wounds," Crixenol said faintly. "What kind of planet creates such creatures?" "In the ship's main laboratory, Doctor. Carl Hughes was explaining Earth's environment to a group of environmental specialists. Carl was a tall, thin man with gray hair who had spent most of his life studying extreme environments on Earth. "These readings must be wrong," said Plixander, a creature that looked like a walking tree. "Your planet's surface temperature varies by over 100 degrees? "Oh yes," Carl replied. "Earth has many different climate zones. The poles can reach minus 40 degrees, while our deserts can hit over 50 degrees above zero. Humans live and work in all these areas." "Impossible," whispered another alien scientist. "Temperature changes of even 10 degrees would kill most of our species." Carl activated a holographic display showing various Earth environments. The aliens watched in horror as images appeared of humans working in environments that looked like scenes from their worst nightmares. "This is the Mariana Trench," Carl explained, showing pictures of deep-sea exploration. "It's the deepest part of our oceans, over 11 kilometers down. The pressure would crush most materials instantly, but humans have built vehicles to explore it." "You voluntarily go to places that would instantly kill you?" asked a floating, gas-based life form. "We have to use special equipment, of course," Carl said. "But yes, humans explore dangerous places regularly. We climb the highest mountains, dive to the deepest ocean floors, explore active volcanoes, and even travel to other planets." The display showed Mount Everest with its freezing temperatures and thin air. Then it showed deep-sea thermal vents, where the water was hot enough to boil and filled with toxic chemicals. Finally, it showed images of human astronauts working in the vacuum of space. "This footage shows humans working in an environment with no atmosphere," Carl continued. "Space is one of the most hostile environments possible, but we've learned to survive there too." One by one, the alien scientists began to leave the room. Some claimed they felt sick. Others said they needed to contact their homeworlds immediately. A few simply stared at the displays in stunned silence. Back in the medical bay, Dr. Ben Rodriguez was explaining the human immune system to increasingly panicked alien doctors. "So your body creates specialized weapons to fight disease?" Dr. Huxley asked weakly. "That's one way to put it," Ben said. "The human immune system can adapt to new threats and remember them for years. We can survive diseases that would wipe out entire populations of other species." "And you deliberately expose yourselves to mild versions of deadly diseases?" "Vaccinations, yes. It trains our immune system to fight the real thing if we encounter it later. It's been one of our most successful medical advances." Thelmoss was studying blood samples under a microscope. "These white blood cells are incredibly aggressive. They attack foreign material like tiny warriors." "Earth is full of bacteria, viruses, and parasites," Ben explained. "Humans needed strong immune systems to survive. We live with microorganisms that would be deadly to most species." The alien doctors looked at each other with growing fear. They were beginning to understand that humans didn't just live on a dangerous planet. They had evolved to thrive in conditions that would be apocalyptic for any other known species. Ambassador Velinari arrived in the medical bay just as the tests were finishing. Her tentacles moved in agitated patterns as she looked at the results. "The Federation Council has made a decision," she announced. "We need to see your planet directly. We must verify these claims before we decide what to do about humanity." Commander Jake Morrison, who had been watching the tests, nodded. "You're welcome to visit Earth, but I should warn you, you'll need environmental suits. Our atmosphere might be toxic to some of your species." "Toxic?" Velinari's tentacles went rigid. "Well, Earth's oxygen levels are pretty high compared to most worlds," Jake explained. "And we have things like pollen, dust, and various airborne microorganisms. Nothing dangerous to humans, but it might affect you differently." Dr. Ben Rodriguez added helpfully, "Don't worry, we can provide medical support if needed. Humans are used to treating injuries and illnesses in the field." The aliens looked at each other in growing panic. The humans were casually discussing their planet's atmosphere as if it were mildly inconvenient weather, when it sounded like a biological weapon to everyone else. That night, As the alien scientists compiled their reports, one fact became clear to everyone aboard the Federation vessel. Earth hadn't just produced tough creatures by accident. It had created the ultimate survivors, being so adapted to danger and hardship that they considered the impossible to be routine. General Crixenel sent an urgent message to the Federation Military Command, recommend immediate peaceful contact. Protocols. These humans are not aggressive, but they are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. They have evolved beyond our understanding of what life can survive. In her own report, Ambassador Velinari wrote, "The humans are not our enemies, but they represent something we have never seen before." The Federation Council meeting lasted 3 full days. Representatives from 47 different worlds argued about what to do with the humans and their impossible death world. Some wanted to quarantine Earth immediately. Others insisted they needed to learn more. In the end, they reached a compromise that terrified everyone involved. They would invite a small group of humans to visit Sanctuary, the Federation's most perfect world. If humans could survive and function normally in a standard galactic environment, then perhaps the stories about Earth were exaggerated. If they couldn't adapt to a peaceful world, then Earth would be classified as too dangerous for contact. Ambassador Velinari delivered the invitation personally. She found Commander Jake Morrison in the Terra Nova's dining hall, eating something called pizza while reading reports. The smell of cooked food made her tentacles curl in disgust. Her species absorbed nutrients directly from water. "Commander Morrison," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "the Federation Council would like to invite a small delegation of humans to visit one of our worlds." Jake looked up with interest. "That sounds great. Which world?" "Sanctuary. It's considered the most beautiful and peaceful planet in Federation space. We thought it would be a good place for first cultural exchange." "Sounds perfect," Jake said with a smile. "I'll ask for volunteers." Within hours, 3 humans had agreed to make the trip. Dr. Emma Walsh was a geologist with brown hair and curious eyes who specialized in studying rock formations. Rick Cooper was a survival expert and outdoor guide, a muscular man with sandy hair who had spent his life in Earth's wilderness areas. Nancy Phillips was a diplomat with gray hair and gentle manner, experienced in negotiating between different human cultures. The journey to Sanctuary took 5 days aboard a Federation transport ship. The aliens watched the humans carefully during the trip, amazed at how calmly they adapted to the alien environment. Rick Cooper actually seemed to enjoy the low gravity in the ship's recreation areas, doing backflips and acrobatic moves that terrified the crew. "Is he not afraid of falling?" asked Captain Zixtel, a bird-like creature whose species never left the ground on their homeworld. "Rick's been rock climbing since he was a kid," Dr. Walsh explained. "Humans learn to move in 3 dimensions pretty early. We're good at judging distances and managing our balance." Nancy Phillips spent most of the journey learning about Federation culture and politics. She was fascinated by how peaceful galactic civilization had become, but the aliens seemed troubled by her questions about conflict resolution. "What do you do when different species disagree about important issues?" she asked during one meeting. "We discuss the matter calmly until everyone agrees," replied Diplomat Yulvex, whose people looked like walking crystals. "Violence is unthinkable." "But what if the disagreement is really serious? What if lives are at stake?" The alien diplomat looked confused. "Then we discuss it more carefully. Why would lives be at stake?" Nancy realized that these species had never faced the kind of life-or-death decisions that shaped human history. They had evolved in environments so safe that they couldn't imagine situations where quick, dangerous action might be necessary. Sanctuary appeared on the viewing screens like something from a dream. The planet was covered in soft green forests, calm blue oceans, and gentle rolling hills. There were no mountains, no deserts, no storms. The weather was perfectly controlled, the seasons mild and predictable. Even the day and night cycle was exactly 24 hours with no variations. "It's beautiful," Emma said honestly. "Very peaceful. This represents the galactic standard for habitable worlds. explained their guide, a tall purple being named Kexrun. Most Federation species evolved on planets very similar to this one. As their shuttle descended toward Sanctuary's surface, Rick Cooper was studying the landscape with professional interest. Something about the planet bothered him, but he couldn't put his finger on what it was. They landed at the capital city, a graceful collection of smooth buildings that seemed to grow out of the landscape itself. Gardens and parks filled every available space. Small streams ran between the buildings, filled with fish that had never known predators. The air smelled like flowers and fresh rain. "Welcome to Paradise City," Texran said proudly. "Home to over 2 million beings from 30 different species." The humans walked through the streets, marveling at the alien architecture. But as they explored, they began to notice things that worried them. Dr. Walsh was the first to speak up. "Texran, are these buildings earthquake-resistant?" she asked, pointing to a tall, thin tower that swayed gently in the breeze. "Earthquake?" The alien guide looked confused. "What is earthquake?" "When the ground shakes, seismic activity." "Oh, Sanctuary has no such problems. The planet is geologically stable," Emma frowned. "But this building design would collapse if the ground moved. Even slightly. And I don't see any emergency exits or reinforced structures. Why would we need such things?" Kexran asked. Rick Cooper was studying the city's layout with growing concern. "Where are your emergency shelters? Your backup power systems? Your evacuation routes?" "I don't understand these terms," admitted Kexran. "What do you do if something goes wrong?" Nancy asked. "If there's a fire or a flood or any kind of disaster?" "Nothing goes wrong on Sanctuary," Kexran said proudly. "That's why it's called Sanctuary." The humans exchanged worried glances. They were beginning to understand that the Federation species had never learned to plan for emergencies because they had never faced any real emergencies. Their first major test came during a tour of Sanctuary's famous crystal caves. These were natural formations deep underground, filled with beautiful rock crystals that glowed with their own light. Thousands of tourists visited them every day. The tour group included the 3 humans, several alien guides, and about 20 alien tourists from various worlds. They descended into the caves using a slow, gentle elevator that took 15 minutes to reach the bottom. Emma immediately noticed that there was only one elevator and no emergency stairs. "This cave system is quite old," she observed, studying the rock formations. "Probably formed over millions of years by water erosion." "Yes," said their guide, a floating jellyfish-like being. "The caves are one of our oldest natural wonders." "Are they stable?" Emma asked. "Do you monitor for structural changes?" "The caves have been the same for thousands of years." "Why would they change?" Emma was about to explain geological processes when the ground gave a slight tremor. It was barely noticeable, just a tiny vibration that lasted about 3 seconds. On Earth, it would have been classified as a micro-earthquake, too small to cause any damage or concern, but the aliens reacted as if the world was ending. The guide began shrieking in a high-pitched wail. The tourists panicked, running in random directions and colliding with each other. Several small aliens simply froze in place, paralyzed by terror. The emergency alarm system activated, filling the caves with flashing lights and loud sirens that only made the panic worse. "Everyone remain calm," shouted Rick Cooper, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Emma immediately began examining the cave walls and ceiling, looking for signs of structural damage. "It's okay," she called out. "The cave is stable. That was just a tiny earth tremor." But the aliens couldn't hear her over their own panic. The floating guide had inflated itself into a ball and was spinning helplessly near the ceiling. 2 of the crystal-based tourists had actually shattered from stress. Leaving their companions wailing over the fragments, Nancy Phillips tried to organize an evacuation, but the aliens were running in circles, trampling each other in their terror. The single elevator had stopped working when the alarm system activated, trapping everyone underground. "We need to get these people out of here," Rick said, grabbing Emma's arm. "They're going to hurt themselves," Emma nodded. The tremor destabilized. "Some loose rocks up ahead." Nothing serious, but it might be dangerous if they keep running around like this. Rick stepped into the center of the panicking crowd and let out a sharp whistle that cut through the noise. The sound was so unexpected that most of the aliens stopped moving and stared at him. "Listen to me," he said in a calm, clear voice. "The cave is safe, but we need to leave in an orderly fashion. Follow me to the elevator." "The elevator isn't working," wailed one of the guides. "Then we'll fix it," Rick said simply. He walked over to the elevator controls and began examining the system. Emma joined him, using her geological knowledge to assess the situation. Nancy started organizing the aliens into small groups, keeping them calm with gentle words and reassuring gestures. "The earthquake sensors shut down the elevator automatically," Emma explained. "It's a safety feature, but it's way too sensitive." That tremor wasn't dangerous at all. Rick found the manual override switch and reset the elevator system. Within minutes, they were moving tourists up to the surface in small groups. The humans remained calm and efficient throughout the process, while the aliens struggled with their overwhelming fear. When they finally reached the surface, they found that the entire city was in emergency mode. Buildings had been evacuated, emergency services were rushing around in confusion, and government officials were declaring a planet-wide crisis, all because of a tremor so small that most humans wouldn't have noticed it. 2 weeks after the cave incident, Sanctuary faced its first real crisis in over 1,000 years. The planet's sun released a massive solar flare, something that happened naturally every few decades but had never affected the carefully controlled world before. The flare disrupted Sanctuary's atmospheric processors, the giant machines that kept the planet's weather perfect and its air clean, within hours. The Paradise World was experiencing something its inhabitants had never seen: natural weather. Storm clouds formed for the first time in centuries. The temperature began to fluctuate outside the narrow range the aliens considered safe. Most terrifying of all, the wind started to blow harder than the gentle breezes the planet was designed for. Engineer Pete Johnson was in his quarters aboard the Terra Nova when the emergency alert came through. He was a short, stocky man with graying hair and hands permanently stained with machine oil. Pete had spent 30 years fixing things that weren't supposed to break, and he could repair almost anything with basic tools and determination. "Commander." "Morrison," came the panicked voice of Ambassador Velinari over the communication system. "We have a planetary emergency. Our atmospheric control systems are failing. Millions of lives are at risk." Jake Morrison was in the command center within minutes. "What kind of failure are we talking about?" "Complete system breakdown," Velinari replied, her tentacles writhing with terror. "The solar flare damaged our weather control network. We're experiencing natural atmospheric conditions for the first time in our recorded history." Jake looked at the readings coming from Sanctuary's surface. To human eyes, the conditions looked like a mild spring storm. Wind speeds of about 30 miles per hour, temperature dropping to what humans would consider pleasantly cool, and some scattered rain showers. "How long until your repair teams can fix the processors?" Jake asked. There was a long pause. "We don't have repair teams," Velinari admitted. "The systems were designed to never fail. No one knows how to fix them." Dr. Helen Davis was already suiting up in the Terra Nova's engineering bay. She was a tall woman with short black hair and sharp green eyes, an atmospheric specialist who had worked on terraforming projects throughout human space. When she heard about Sanctuary's crisis, she immediately began gathering equipment. "Pete, grab your toolkit," she called out. "We're going to need every repair device we have." "What's the situation?" Pete asked, checking his instruments. "Atmospheric. Processors are down on an entire planet. The locals don't know how to fix them, and they're panicking because their weather isn't perfectly controlled anymore." Pete whistled softly. "Weather control for a whole planet? That's some serious engineering. What's causing the failure?" "Solar flare disrupted their computer networks. Probably fried some circuits and scrambled their control programs. So we need to repair an alien computer system we've never seen before, fix hardware we don't understand, and do it all while the locals are having a nervous breakdown." Helen grinned. Sounds like a normal day in engineering. Within 2 hours, a human repair team was on Sanctuary's surface. The storm had intensified slightly, still mild by Earth standards, but the aliens were treating it like the end of the world. Emergency shelters had been set up, but they were flimsy structures designed for decoration rather than actual protection from weather. Pete Johnson stood in front of the main atmospheric control facility, a massive building filled with technology he had never seen before. Alien technicians ran around in panic, trying to read instruments they didn't understand while warning lights flashed everywhere. "Okay," Pete said to Helen. "I've fixed human machines. Alien machines can't be that different. Let's start with the basics." Chief Engineer Plixander, a creature that looked like a walking tree, approached them with obvious desperation. "Thank you for coming," he said. "But I must warn you, our technology is very advanced. It may be beyond your understanding." Pete looked at the control panels and scratched his head. "Well, let's see what we're dealing with." He began tracing power lines and checking connections, using techniques he had learned fixing everything from starship engines to coffee makers. Helen worked beside him, analyzing the atmospheric data and trying to understand what the machines were supposed to do. "This is interesting," Helen said after an hour of investigation. "Your atmospheric processors are incredibly sophisticated, but they're also incredibly fragile. They were designed to work in perfect conditions and can't handle any disruption. But how do we repair them?" Plixander asked. "The quantum stabilizers are offline, the nanoconstructors have stopped functioning, and the molecular assemblers are producing random outputs." Pete looked at the alien engineer with a puzzled expression. "I have no idea what any of those things are, but I can see where your main power coupling has burned out." He pointed to a section of the machine where black scorch marks showed obvious electrical damage. "Looks like the solar flare sent a power surge through your system. Fried this whole section. But the quantum stabilizers ... Plixander began. "Don't worry about the quantum whatever," Pete interrupted. "This is basic electrical work. Helen, do we have a replacement coupling that might fit?" Helen checked their equipment. "Not exactly, but I can jury-rig something with what we brought." For the next 6 hours, Pete and Helen worked steadily while the storm continued outside. They bypassed damaged circuits, replaced burned components with improvised parts, and slowly brought the atmospheric control system back online. The alien technicians watched in amazement as the humans ignored the sophisticated control interfaces and worked directly with the machine's basic hardware. "How did you know to disconnect the tertiary flux capacitors?" asked a young alien engineer. "What now?" Pete replied, not looking up from his work. "I just unplugged the thing that was sparking and making angry noises." "But the technical manuals say that's impossible without recalibrating the entire quantum matrix." "Kid, sometimes the manuals are wrong. When something's broke, you figure out why it's broke and you fix it. All the fancy words in the galaxy won't help if you can't use a screwdriver." Meanwhile, outside the facility, Rick Cooper and Dr. Emma Walsh were helping with the evacuation efforts. The storm had caused several alien buildings to suffer structural damage, not because the weather was particularly severe, but because nothing on Sanctuary had been built to withstand any weather at all. "This building is going to collapse," Emma announced, studying a tall spire that was swaying dangerously in the wind. "Everyone needs to get out now." "But the structural integrity scanners show green lights," protested a local official. "Your scanners are wrong," Rick said bluntly. "That building is held up by wishful thinking and good intentions. The first real gust of wind is going to knock it over." They managed to evacuate the building just minutes before it toppled, crashing harmlessly into an empty plaza. Similar scenes played out across the city as humans identified dangerous structures that the aliens had never realized were unsafe. Nancy Phillips found herself coordinating the overall emergency response from the city's command center. The local officials were paralyzed by the crisis, unable to make decisions because they had never faced anything like it before. "We need to move everyone from the coastal areas to higher ground," she announced, studying weather reports. "This storm is going to bring a storm surge." "Storm surge?" asked the city's emergency coordinator. What is storm surge? When strong winds push ocean water onto the land, it can flood coastal areas. But our coastal buildings are very beautiful. They have been there for centuries. They're also about to be underwater, Nancy said firmly. We need to evacuate them now. The humans worked through the night, managing an emergency response while simultaneously teaching the aliens how to handle their first natural disaster. By morning, the storm had passed, the atmospheric processors were running again, and Sanctuary was slowly returning to its artificial perfection. But something fundamental had changed. Ambassador Velinari stood in the command center, watching the damage reports come in. Thousands of buildings had been damaged or destroyed. Infrastructure that had worked flawlessly for centuries had failed at the first sign of stress. And through it all, the humans had remained calm, competent, and effective. Your people saved our world, she said to Commander Jake Morrison. Without human help, millions would have died. We just did what needed to be done, Jake replied. Any human engineer could have fixed those machines. Any human emergency team could have coordinated the evacuation. That's exactly what terrifies us, Velinari admitted. What you consider basic problem-solving abilities we see as miraculous powers. You remained calm during a crisis that drove our entire civilization to panic. General Crixenol arrived later, that day with a full report for the Federation Council. The humans are not dangerous because they are aggressive, he wrote. They are dangerous because they are competent. They can solve problems that would destroy our civilizations. They can remain functional in conditions that render us helpless. Dr. Helen Davis was packing up her equipment when Chief Engineer Plixander approached her. I have studied your repair methods, he said. You ignored all our safety protocols and technical procedures. Yet you succeeded where our best engineers failed. 6 months after the Sanctuary crisis, the Federation had established the Emergency Response Protocol. Whenever a member world faced a disaster beyond their capabilities, they would send a message to the Human Crisis Response Team. The humans had accepted this role eagerly, seeing it as a chance to help their new galactic neighbors while doing what they did best, solving impossible problems. Captain Sarah Miller stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned vessel Endeavour, humanity's first official Federation emergency response ship. She was a woman in her 40s with short red hair and steady blue eyes, chosen to lead the crisis team because of her experience handling disasters on Earth's most dangerous frontier colonies. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperation between human and alien technology. Federation scientists had provided advanced sensors and communication systems, while human engineers had added redundant backup systems, emergency repair equipment, and what the aliens called impossibly robust construction methods. Captain Miller, came the voice of Communications Officer Tony Garcia, a young man with dark hair who had learned to speak 17 different alien languages. We're receiving a priority distress call from the Helix Nebula. It's coming from a world called Verdania. Sarah moved to the communication console. What's the nature of the emergency? Tony's face grew serious as he translated the incoming message. It's hard to understand exactly, but it sounds like their entire ecosystem is collapsing. They're saying something about the green death and requesting immediate assistance. Dr. Marcus Chung, the ship's chief scientist, looked up from his research station. He was a tall, thin man with black hair who specialized in studying alien biology and environmental systems. Verdania is a forest world, he said. The entire planet is covered in plant life. If their ecosystem is failing, it could mean planetary extinction. How long to reach Verdania? Sarah asked the navigation officer. 18 hours at maximum speed, replied Lieutenant Jenny Walsh, a young woman with brown hair who had trained on both human and alien navigation systems. Set course immediately, Sarah ordered. And send a message to Verdania. Tell them help is coming. As the Endeavour jumped to faster-than-light speed, Sarah gathered her team in the main briefing room. The Human Crisis Response Team consisted of 12 specialists chosen for their ability to work Under extreme pressure. Dr. Angela Foster was the team's medical officer, a middle-aged woman with gray hair who had experience treating both humans and aliens. Engineer Bobby Martinez was a short, stocky man who could repair almost any machine with basic tools and creative thinking. Environmental specialist Dr. Karen Wright was an expert on atmospheric systems and planetary ecology. "What do we know about Verdania?" Sarah asked as the team assembled. Dr. Chun activated the display screen. Verdania is home to the Sylvani, a plant-based species that evolved from sentient trees. They've lived in harmony with their forest ecosystem for millions of years. The planet has no cities as we understand them. The Sylvani live within the forest itself, and now their ecosystem is dying? Asked Dr. Foster. According to the distress call, yes, but we don't know why. The Sylvani have never faced anything like this before? Bobby Martinez studied the technical data about Verdania. Their technology is all biological, he noted. They grow their tools and buildings instead of manufacturing them. If their plants are dying, they're losing everything: homes, food, technology, transportation. How bad could it get? Asked Lieutenant Walsh. Complete planetary extinction, Dr. Wright said grimly. If the forest ecosystem collapses, the Sylvani will die along with it. They can't survive without their symbiotic relationship with the plants. 18 hours later, the Endeavour dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Verdania. What they saw made even the experienced crisis team gasp in shock. The planet that should have been completely green was covered in vast brown patches. From space, it looked like a skin infection spreading across the world's surface. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Chun. "Half the planet's forests are already dead." Captain Miller opened communication with the planet. "Verdania, this is Captain Sarah Miller of the Human Emergency Response Team. We're here to help." The voice that answered was weak and filled with despair. "Human Captain, this is Elder Barkthalen of the Great Forest. We are dying. Our children wither, our elders fade. The green death spreads faster than we can understand." "We're coming down to the surface," Sarah replied. "Can you provide us with a safe landing site?" "There are no safe places anymore," the alien replied sadly. "But there is a clearing near our council grove. We will guide you down." The shuttle landed in what had once been a beautiful forest clearing. Now it was surrounded by dying trees whose leaves had turned brown and were falling like snow. The air smelled of decay and death. Even worse, the humans could see that the infection was spreading visibly. Healthy trees were turning brown before their eyes. Elder Barkthalen met them at the landing site. He was a tall, tree-like being with bark-covered skin and leaves growing from his arms and head. But his leaves were yellowing and his bark looked dry and cracked. "You came?" he said in a voice like wind through dying branches. "But I fear you are too late. The green death has taken half our world in just 10 days. Dr. Wright immediately began taking soil and air samples while Dr. Chun examined the dying trees. Bobby Martinez started setting up emergency equipment, and Dr. Foster prepared her medical supplies. "Elder Barkthalen," Sarah said gently, "can you tell us when this started? What were the first signs?" "It began in the southern forests," the elder replied. "A small patch of trees simply ... stopped. They turned brown overnight. We thought it was a natural disease that would pass. But it spread. Every day more forests died." "Have you tried treating it?" Dr. Foster asked. "We know nothing of disease," Barkthalen admitted. "For millions of years, the forest has been healthy. We have no healers, no medicine. We are part of the forest, and if it dies, we die." Dr. Chun was studying a dying tree under his portable microscope when he suddenly straightened up. "Captain, I need to see a healthy tree immediately. This isn't a disease." They moved deeper into the forest where some trees were still green and healthy. Dr. Chun took samples from both dying and healthy trees, running them through his analysis equipment. "It's not biological," he announced after an hour of intensive testing. "This isn't a virus, bacteria, or fungus. It's chemical poisoning." "Poisoning?" Elder Barkthalen's leaves rustled with confusion. "But there are no poisons on Verdania." We have never used chemicals. Dr. Wright was studying her atmospheric readings when she made a discovery. Captain, look at this. The soil contamination is concentrated around these metal deposits. She led them to an area where strange blue-green metal veins ran through the rock. Her instruments were showing high levels of toxic elements. This metal is highly radioactive, she said. It's been leaching into the groundwater and poisoning the entire forest ecosystem. But that metal has always been there, Barkthalen protested. It has been part of our world for millions of years. Bobby Martinez was examining the metal deposits with his own equipment. Elder, has anything changed recently? Any new construction, mining, or digging? We do not mine or dig, Barkthalen replied, but ... He paused, thinking. The young ones have been growing deeper root systems lately. They wanted to reach water that was further underground ... Dr. Chun nodded grimly. That's it. Your people accidentally tapped into a layer of radioactive ore. The deep roots brought the contamination up to the surface, spreading it throughout the forest. Can it be stopped? Barkthalen asked desperately. Yes, Sarah said firmly. But it's going to require some major engineering work. Bobby Martinez was already sketching plans on his tablet. We need to isolate the contaminated groundwater and neutralize the radioactive material. It's possible, but it will take some serious equipment. What kind of equipment? Asked Dr. Wright. The kind that doesn't exist yet, Bobby replied with a grin. We'll have to build it. Over the next 3 days, the human team worked around the clock. Bobby Martinez designed a system of underground barriers to contain the contaminated water, while Dr. Wright developed a biological treatment using earth bacteria that could break down radioactive materials. Dr. Chun worked with the Sylvani to identify which trees could be saved and which were too far gone. Dr. Foster developed medical treatments to help the plant-based aliens recover from radiation exposure. The work was dangerous and exhausting. The humans had to wear protective suits while working in the contaminated areas, and several team members showed early signs of radiation sickness. But they continued working because they knew that every hour of delay meant more dead forest. This is impossible, said Barkthalen as he watched Bobby Martinez building a water purification system out of spare parts and scavenged materials. You are creating solutions from nothing. That's what humans do, Bobby replied, not looking up from his work. When something's broken, we fix it. When there's no solution, we make one. The breakthrough came on the 4th day when Dr. Wright's bacterial treatment began working. The radioactive contamination levels started dropping rapidly. As the engineered bacteria consumed the toxic materials and converted them into harmless compounds,